Okay, so this is the presentation on the focus on a dynamic analysis of Adobe Flash files and some of the things that you have to do in order to be able to do so, the benefits it will give you, and so on. So first, I am Jacob Thompson. I work as a senior security analyst at Independent Security Evaluators. Some of the things I personally focus on are reverse engineering, cryptography, system and application security, and designing new systems to be secure. And also I gave a presentation here last year. It was a stable talk on TLS client certificates, so you may have been there. A quick word on ISE. We're a small security company. We focus on performing security assessments for our customers of either their own products or the products that they use for their vendors. We focus on defense, we focus on white box, but in general, we're working on security assessments and trying to do a good job at that, including looking at things like this. So what happens when we run into Flash is a natural outgrowth of one of our security assessments. So what are our ultimate goals of Flash and working with it? So oftentimes we will run into a security assessment that involves Flash, and oftentimes we're looking at things like, does this Flash application itself have security problems? Is it storing things incorrectly? Or does looking at the code for this client help us to find vulnerabilities in the server? So maybe the encryption is all on the client side, right? Looking at the Flash code could help you to do that. Maybe there's some hidden API call that's in the stub for some RESTful web service that could help us with that as well. Two types of analysis, as always, static and dynamic. Are we looking at code? Are we using decompilers? Or are we actually trying to debug and trace the code as it runs live? The biggest focus and where the challenge comes in here is Flash files can be compiled in two different modes, just like other types of applications, release and debug. There will be some challenges that come up later on trying to do this dynamic analysis on a release version. And our ultimate goal, the perfect, would be to take a release file and turn it back into debuggable. Obviously, there's information lost, like comments, but that would be our ultimate goal, is to be able to do all the types of steps we could do on a debug version, but on a release version. And some ways that Flash is implemented make that harder than you would expect. So first, well, Flash, right? It's supposed to be dead and dying, but Flash is hanging around in some areas stronger than others. In particular, I saw a survey recently that said it's down to about 10% of websites. Actually, the more popular the website, the more likely Flash is still there. But it's still there in its traditional strengths, which were streaming, video, graphics. So this JavaScript, web, 3D APIs are still kind of coming along, but also cross-browser compatibility. So HTML5 is, Google says this will be a wonderful thing to have in HTML, puts it in Chrome, maybe 3 years later it's got down to IE. So Flash, you don't have that problem. They're very aggressive, plus all the security vulnerabilities. New feature gets added to Flash, it's out there to some very high percentage of Flash users within a short period of time. Also, one of the other things that will help Flash to hang out in the future is this Adobe Air, which is their way of using Flash at its core to produce cross-browser, cross-platform, desktop and mobile applications, all from one code base. So to some, we've seen, I'd say maybe about 10 to 20% of the mobile applications that we've looked at involve Adobe Air. So I think that's where you'll see a Flash in the long term. It will probably vanish off of websites slowly. Longer term, you'll see Adobe Air. And some of these techniques are applicable to it, especially once we get into the actual changing of SWF files. So what does looking at Flash help us to do, or what types of attack surfaces? Well, authentication. If there's some type of API on the server and we want to know how does the server distinguish between a legitimate user and a fake one, well, what does the normal client have to do in order to authenticate itself to the server? Maybe there's some type of, I have client-side blunders here. Maybe the authentication and session management is not what you would expect. It's very simple to say we log into the server, it gives us a session ID. You'll be surprised how much of a problem that is for web developers. They think they have a better idea. Maybe we store the session at the client. Maybe the client just does its own authentication and uses some random number and hashing algorithms, encryption to prove that, oh, we're that user. And having the code to the Flash and being able to trace through it can be very helpful for that. as I mentioned earlier, maybe there is an API on the server. Maybe it's JSON-based, RESTful. Maybe it involves XML and SOAP, unfortunately. And having that, oftentimes the client for calling those APIs is auto-generated. So if you've created some kind of backdoor undocumented API on the server, the client stub probably has it in it. And you might be able to find that by looking at the application, but looking at traffic alone may not be so helpful. Also, cryptography, so that's just hitting.
Hi folks, I'm Geek here. Well, track 4, aka the three-way, is giving us a lot of problems this year. And once again, we had a video crash, and this time, well, we don't have any audio in this one till about the 24-minute, 27-second mark. So, sorry about the inconvenience, and hopefully we'll figure out how to make the equipment a little bit more reliable. Thanks for your time.
You can use Java-based tools to reverse engineer it. And if this sounds intriguing, I actually have a team member who's doing a presentation on Java native interface tomorrow. And some of those same techniques, in theory, you could use to attack Air native extensions. So if you actually go to this file or go to this link, you can take a look at the tool as it is. Maybe some of you have encountered Adobe Flash already in your security evaluations. Maybe you can use it, maybe not. But if you go to this location, you can take a look at it. So any questions in the meantime? Nothing? Do you run into Flash much in your security evaluations, those of you who are doing security here? Right, so maybe this will be useful. So good news is I've put it under BSD license, and what I'm working on right now is trying to get it incorporated into that JPEXS decompiler. So we'll see if the author, if that's amenable to the author, you might see a new menu option in there to do this, and that would be, I think it will be a big help to all of us here. All right, so any final questions?